January 20th, 1961. John Fitzgerald Kennedy's inauguration had to be the wackiest inauguration ever. Almost a million people crammed into the freezing 22-degree Washington, D.C. morning to see the president-elect officially become the president. Frozen snow was scattered all over, and the sun was bright.
Crews had worked all night long to clear the heavy snowfall. This inauguration was one of the coldest to be witnessed in many, many years.
And conditions weren't as bad as in 1841 when President Harrison caught a cold during the inauguration, which became pneumonia, killing him only a month after he took office, but I digress. With much fanfare, the dignitaries all shuffled into their places. According to plan, last to take his seat would be JFK. And now that he was seated, everyone was ready and the program could begin. But it didn't. Instead, everyone sat awkwardly, not knowing why they weren't starting. A long delay ensued while guests and onlookers shivered in the cold. After stalling for 15 minutes, live news anchors ran out of presidential scuttlebutt to talk about and started reading unrelated news while everyone still sat and waited. Finally, the cause was disclosed.
Is there any indication in there what's causing the delay?
Well, there is a rather amusing situation. A number of pages keep running through the rotunda into a dark recess of the Capitol building and coming back on a dead run with chairs. Apparently, there are not enough chairs on the inaugural platform for all of the guests.
So there were too many dignitaries and not enough seats for all of them. Surely some party planners' heads would be rolling for this. Finally, after more than 20 minutes and countless numb toes later, everyone had a seat and the proceedings proceeded.
We are here today to inaugurate the 35th president of this union of free people.
The Marine Corps band played a stirring rendition of America the Beautiful. Cardinal Richard Cushing took to the microphone to offer the invocation. No sooner did he begin his prayer than smoke started to rise up out of the lectern. Kennedy noticed it and stared at it, thinking to himself, I'm going to have to jump in and take action when this thing bursts into flame. At this point, Kennedy's probably thinking, what more could go wrong? Well, spoiler alert, more could and would go wrong. And he's thinking, first we sit here in the cold for 20 minutes, and now Cardinal Cushing is about to be burned alive? Eisenhower's like, hey, are you going to do something? And Kennedy's like, what am I supposed to do, interrupt the prayer? Well, this went on for 7 long minutes while the podium smoldered and the Cardinal droned on. At length, Cardinal Cushing wrapped up his prayer not a moment too soon because the lectern was now aflame and billowing smoke. By this point, a firefighter had been poking around the Cardinal trying to find the source of the fire without stopping the prayer. Let's take a moment and enjoy the newsacre commentary while the VIPs try to figure out what to do.
During the invocation, the lectern caught fire, apparently, because smoke is pouring out of it. People are scurrying around behind it, and we're unable to see exactly what has happened, but a fireman is there at work on it, and we gather there is a heater under it, and presumably it overheated, but that's all we can tell you at the moment. In any case, while Cardinal Cushing spoke, smoke was pouring out of the sides of the lectern. President Kennedy, Mr. Eisenhower were staring at it, wondering what was happening and just what was going on. They're now pouring water on whatever it is. There's a fireman there down behind the lectern. Behind the lectern, on his knees.
The great danger is that some of the cables are going to burn up.
The fireman in this case is J. Leonard Wrench, who is a Democratic Party official. He was the the director of the convention in Los Angeles. He seems to be head fireman.
They're trying to preserve some of the cables for fear they may cut off the communications, either public address system or our broadcast channels or whatever. Apparently the fire is now out.
Seems the fire has been brought under control, we gather.
They mostly doused the fire, but it was still smoking when Marian Anderson took to the podium to sing the national anthem. Imagine having to sing to such a crowd at such an event, all while inhaling smoke. At any rate, Cardinal Cushing's prayer was completed, but this wouldn't be the last prayer that the American people were treated to. There were not one, not two, but 3 additional prayers given. Now, if you're saying, wow, that's a lot of prayers, it actually isn't. Many prayers, in addition to the invocation and benediction, have been sprinkled throughout presidential inaugurations on multiple occasions. On this occasion, the 4 separate prayers totaled almost 30 minutes. And I say that's great. A president should invoke the assistance of God for running the most powerful nation on earth. LBJ seemed to think it was a little bit excessive, especially considering that in his first inauguration there would be no prayers, but more on that in a minute. And speaking of Johnson, at this point, LBJ took the vice president's oath using a regular-sized Bible. After the 3rd prayer, famed poet Robert Frost took to the stand. He wanted to read a new poem called Dedication that he had just written for the event. But due to the amount of sun glaring off the snow, he couldn't see the paper well enough to read it. He struggled through a few of the lines awkwardly. Let's watch.
And today is for my cause a day of days. And his be poetry's old-fashioned praise, who was the first to think of such a thing. This tribute to be his that here I bring is about... No, I'm not having a good life here, sorry. Is about the new order of the ages. I can't say it. Is about the new order of the ages that God, that in their Latin, our founding sages, God gave it his approval of. Let me have it.
LBJ tried to block the sun with his top hat, but Mr. Frost declined the help and ended up just skipping that poem and reciting his well-known poem entitled The Gift outright.
I think I'll say, this was to be a preface to the poem I can say to you without seeing it.
Now be administered to the President-elect.
Finally, President Kennedy removed his overcoat and took the oath with a comically large Bible nearby. And he was not the only president to use a huge family Bible. But incidentally, due to that fiasco with the chairs and the subsequent delays, Kennedy had already been the president for 51 minutes before taking the oath of office. You see, according to the 20th Amendment, he officially became president at noon on Inauguration Day, oath or no oath taken.
You, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of your ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
And now, at long length, JFK took to the microphone and in just under 14 minutes gave his well-lauded inaugural speech, including this oft-repeated gem.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
And then to wrap up the proceedings, the 4th prayer. Toward the end of this benediction, Vice President Johnson was so visibly bored and he looked absolutely grouchy. And with that, the U.S. Marine Band played the Star-Spangled Banner, and that was that. The most bizarre presidential inauguration ever was concluded. Kennedy's short presidency had begun. but that's another story. Thanks for watching, gents.